Hi, English 1301 students. It's Dr. Murray. I wanted to talk to you a bit about the film, The Inventor. Let me just say I have my questions about the film on my laptop here, and I'm going to go through some of them, not all of them, but some of them to sort of get you thinking about them or sort of contribute in some way as you're answering them or thinking about what you're going to write about in your paper. So let me just give you a heads. I'm going to make a video just for the writing of the paper about the film, The Inventor. But let me just start this video by saying what your task is going to be in essay number 2 about The Inventor is to do a rhetorical analysis of Theranos's public rhetoric. And so when I say Theranos, obviously it's a whole company. We find out about other people that are part of the company, namely, it could be anyone interviewed in the film from Erica Chung to Tyler Schultz, etc. But what we really mean when we say Theranos is Elizabeth Holmes. The truth is Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung are examples of people who ultimately went against Theranos. Not because I think that they were disloyal people, because it sounds like they were quite loyal and quite enthusiastic about what they were doing for quite a while until they found out that Elizabeth Holmes and also Sunny Balwani were essentially being dishonest, and they were completely deceiving the public, etc. And only then did Chung and Schultz, basically become whistleblowers. And being a whistleblower, frankly, is a public service. It's a risky thing to do. You could totally jeopardize your own ability to be employed at other places in the future. In some cases, you could actually be risking your life, certainly your reputation. But the reason people do it is in service of the public, saying this is not safe, this is not healthy, the public is being lied to. And so, I often say about those two that they were two of the heroes in this film, because what they did, they did for other people's well-being other than their own, and they put themselves at risk in the process. Whereas, Elizabeth Holmes did what she did, for herself, for her own enrichment, for her own glorification. Now, it does raise this question: is Dan Ariely, he's the behavioral economist that's interviewed throughout the movie, at the beginning of the movie. And at the beginning of the movie, he says, no one doubts that Elizabeth Holmes, I'm paraphrasing, got into this for the right reasons or something like that. I don't know if I agree with his statement. It's possible to me that that was part of her initial intent, but I think the way things played out showed what her priorities were, because she ultimately absolutely put people's lives at risk. I mean, to cut to the chase, she was withholding important information from the public about the fact that they were having serious problems with their product working, and yet they were actually involved in doing tests at the time. And as we find out in the film from people that worked at the company, the results they were getting, they had major questions about the reliability of those results. Or you could even go further and say they knew the results were highly problematic. And we're talking about blood test results for people with conditions like cancer or other serious illnesses, where getting the exact right results is crucial. It's absolutely crucial, that it could be the deciding factor between life or death. I mean, if you got a wrong result that told you you had no sign of cancer, therefore you ceased your treatments, you could die as a result. And Elizabeth Holmes knew that, And she continued to do what she did despite that. So this shows us that despite her skill as a, I'm going to use this phrase, public relations kind of expert. I mean, that wasn't her field. Her field was, that she was the CEO of this company. But truthfully, she was also, it seems, the architect of the sort of rhetoric of her company. The rhetoric meaning how she's going to persuade the public, which is essentially what either advertising or public relations is. And she initially revealed herself to be quite skilled at it, quite excellent at that. The only problem is, at its worst, that stuff is straight up deception, especially in a case, as was the case in this case, where what she was saying absolutely contradicted the facts. So I think she was actually quite skilled in public relations, and had she gone into that field, she might have excelled. Given what she did go into, she's now in prison, in prison for fraud, where she frankly belongs. So, and I mean, I'm making strong statements here, but the truth is, a jury of her peers found her guilty. This is not, I'm assuming a lot of you just understand or agree with what I'm saying, but I don't have some particular vendetta against her. I think I might have initially been susceptible to her rhetoric somewhat, along with other people. I mean, the reason I qualified it just now and said somewhat is that I'm a pretty skeptical person. I don't trust advertising. I recognize the skill often involved in people making advertisements, but I'm also well aware of how deceptive, or political messages, different kinds of public rhetoric can be quite deceptive. Skepticism is not the same as cynicism. I don't always assume that people are lying, but I think skepticism isn't that you assume everybody's lying. It's that you go, I don't know. In order for me to be persuaded, I would need to know more, or I need to ask certain questions, or I need to analyze what's in front of me and ask, does this really lead to the result they're talking about? So I think skepticism is important, and it leads to critical thinking, which is part of what we're doing in this class. Okay, so question number 4 is about the public image of Theranos, and what kind of appeals they make, or she makes in public. And it particularly talks about pathos appeals, and I say it could include her appearance, her behavior. So one thing is, public rhetoric isn't necessarily just language. It's not necessarily just what people say or what's written. It can also be what someone wears. There can be, there's such a thing as visual rhetoric, which is often what we encounter in commercials and things like that, which also have music and things like that. What I would say is, to just cut to the chase, what she wears is part of her message, because she wears a black turtleneck like Steve Jobs. She's clearly trying to associate herself with this other genius inventor who is also a sort of CEO of a Silicon Valley company. She tells the story of the fact that she wears the same thing every day. That sounds great when she says, well, it saves me from having to devote energy to choosing my clothes and all that, except that was said previously by Einstein. She knows that because she read it in a book. She's just using that as more of her rhetoric to associate herself with another genius, Einstein, which is part of this sort of, she says, I'm married to my company, glossing over that she has the relationship with Sunny Balwani. Tries to portray herself as almost like a monk-like character, where in her apartment the only thing in her refrigerator is bottled water. that it's just everything's very simple. It's all about the company. And that's a great image, and it makes her seem totally focused, totally plugged in. The only problem is then when we actually hear from people at the company, we hear a story like the one we're told where the one guy tells us that story. And forgive me that I don't remember the name of this guy right this second, but I should mention there is an IMDb page, a link to it in our readings, etc. That is the names of the people in the movie and pictures of them. So you don't necessarily need to know everyone, but some people are important. I've named some people so far, like Erica Chung and Tyler Schultz. Obviously Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani, but also some of the journalists are important. And so anyway, there are people in the film whose names you do need to know. But anyway, this one employee from Theranos tells us in the film that at one point he went to Elizabeth and said, look, I'm having trouble with the Edison. We need to talk about the size of the box. I know you want it to be this size, but literally that size does not allow us to perform the tests we need to. The laws of physics prevent us from doing what it is you want accomplished. And she, according to him, she said, I don't really have time to talk to you about this right now because I'm in a meeting. And he tells us that the meeting she was in, where she had the more important thing to talk about, was what they were going to name the cloud in which certain information was going to be stored. Not how we were going to design the cloud, but what we were going to name the cloud. And the name, it turned out, was Yoda. Okay? So I say this to say, whether you name it Cloud Number 1 or Yoda or, Winnie the Pooh, right? Has no bearing on anything of substance. It's really just more image with this more kind of like pathos appeal. And that scene's really important because it shows us she values image over science. In a way, she values pathos over logos. He's trying to solve a very important scientific problem, and she's more interested in what the right name for the cloud is, which is like a mood, like Yoda, wise, but also, people love Yoda, and it's Star Wars, and it's exciting, and, all that stuff that's really not as important as can we make the blood testing technology work, okay? So that's very important case of showing us her priority of pathos appeals over logos. I'm running out of time on this video. I'm going to make a second video, but let me just use the time left on here to address something else in here. So another thing is, besides her appearance, I also say her life story or things she often said. Now, she tells these stories in the film about this uncle she had who died of cancer, and I'm going a little quickly here, but I'm just trying to get to the point. I could talk about this more slowly and expand on it, but I'll just say the story she tells us is that basically she didn't have time to say goodbye to him. Now, most of us, if we weren't being that skeptical, would say, oh, this must have been something that really happened to her, and we appreciate how candid and in a way vulnerable she's being by telling us this personal story. But if you're being a little more skeptical, what you might realize is she's exploiting, whether the story's true or not, she's exploiting personal details to fit her advertising for the company, because she links it to this slogan that they have, which is kind of Theranos, so you never have to say goodbye to someone you love too soon, which is repeated over and over again. And at one point we see many television screens piling up showing different occasions of her repeating that. And I think the director includes that to show us this is a deliberately sculpted message. And that is a pathos appeal because it makes people think about a loss of loved ones. but keep in mind, it might not even be true, okay? It's rhetoric. Okay, it's a pathos appeal. I gotta stop here, but I'll pick up in a new video.